This is No One Left Behind by Cosmic Ace. Chapter 5. Don't Mess with Mama Bear Inko and Her Cubs. Summary. Hitoshi learned he's staying. Hitoshi is a good dad, and Eraser Mike is a tad bit oblivious while 5-year-olds are not. Inko was on a warpath. Hitoshi didn't know whether to be scared or cheer her on. Probably the latter. He had pom-poms somewhere. Maybe he could use those. His wife had gathered enough evidence against Shinso's foster parents to fill a thick folder, and enough on all the ones before that to fill an entire binder. He didn't know how she did it, and he might not want to. She had her ways, some of which might be slightly less legal than others. His wife was a badass. Hitoshi loved her so much. Shinso had been living with them for a few days, and he already adored the kid. Hitoshi absolutely loved kids. When he was little, he had dreamed of having a big family. That hadn't really changed much. Shinso was also the cutest little thing, with his fluffy lilac hair and quiet voice that was slowly becoming louder. Izuku loved his new brother. It made Hitoshi feel all fluffy when he saw the two of them playing. Shinso's favorite hero was an underground one called Eraserhead. Hitoshi felt a bit bad that he couldn't get Shinso any merchandise of his favorite hero, since none really existed. He had looked. A lot. The most that had popped up were forum threads on a person that people saw leaping over rooftops, and liked to debate if they were a cryptid. Those were funny, but not what he needed. There might also be a package arriving next week from an artist who commissioned custom print clothes and plushies, but that was unrelated. Completely unconnected in any way. Not like Hitoshi had bought his two boys matching Eraserhead pajamas and stuffed toys. Nope, not him. Never. It's not like Inko would be mad anyway. He had seen her looking at the same thing. Winter break would end soon, which meant the last semester of kindergarten for the boys. Not much would change for them, actually. Shinso's foster parents couldn't legally do anything once Inko opened the case. As soon as she did, they were, in the simplest wording possible, absolutely screwed. Speaking of opening the case, he had to watch the boys so Inko could go to a meeting with her boss about it. Not that it was hard to watch them. The two were absolute angels. Maybe he could bake some cookies with them. How bad could that turn out? Bad was apparently the answer. The boys had been all for making cookies. Hitoshi, however, had not foreseen the absolute mess the three of them would make in the kitchen. He thought he could handle cookies. They were simple. Last time he had made them, nothing went wrong. Adding 2 little kids to the mix apparently tripled the chance for having to spend an hour cleaning the kitchen. At least they helped a bit. The kitchen was thankfully clean by the time the cookies were done. They were set on the stove to cool while Hitoshi rinsed off the 2 boys. They had gotten coated in flour, and Hitoshi had somehow gotten chocolate chips in his hair. Hitoshi also found the marshmallow in there? They hadn't even been using those to bake? Both kids were bouncing up and down while waiting for Hitoshi to get them a cookie. The man chuckled, handing them one each. He was honestly impressed with how fast they disappeared. Inko returned home to a clean kitchen and slightly messy cookies. Hitoshi was just glad nothing had to be scraped off the ceiling this time. Hitoshi decided he liked Zoo's family. His mom was nice to him, and his dad was funny. They even got to make cookies. His favorite food was marshmallows, though. He had never had them before, but he loved them now. He got to sleep in Izuku's bed until his own got there. When Zoo's mom told him he was getting his own bed, he hadn't really believed her. Then they went shopping, and he got to choose whatever sheets he wanted. Hitoshi even found ones that were made of space. Izuku's mom said she liked them, too. She came back after they made cookies, which Hitoshi hadn't done before either. They were delicious. Then Zoo's mom asked if she could talk with him, which confused Hitoshi. Speak with him? About what? He remembered that he hadn't told her about his quirk. It didn't help his nerves. Then she told him about the court case. He didn't know what it meant, but she explained it to him. His foster parents were getting in trouble for what they did. All of them. The bad ones, at least. All the people that had put a muzzle on him or didn't let him talk. Hitoshi didn't really know how to react. He was happy that no one else would have to go through what he did. He was happy that the bad people were going to get in trouble. But he was also worried. Where was he going to go? Would they be just as bad? Miss Midoriya probably couldn't stop every bad person in the world, and why would she? As soon as he was gone, she wouldn't be worrying about him. His train of thought was stopped when she pulled him into a hug. It was warm. Hitoshi realized the only people to hug him had been Midoriya's. He clung to the woman's shirt, only now realizing he was crying. "It's okay, Shinso. It's okay. Why are you crying?" Miss Midoriya said gently. Don't make me leave. Please don't. Don't make me leave. Don't want to go." "Oh, sweetie, it's all right. I'm not making you leave, okay? Don't want to go. Don't want to leave Zoo and Mr. Shi and you. Don't make me go. Shh. It's okay. We're staying here, and you are too, all right? None of us are going anywhere without each other. No leave? I pinky promise, no leaving. We stick together, okay? No one left behind, you included." Hitoshi nodded, face still buried in Mrs. Midoriya's shirt. No one left behind. It had a nice ring to it. Then Mrs. Midoriya told him everything she was planning to do. Even if he didn't understand most of it, there were names he recognized and words he knew. He understood something very well, though. The Midoriyas wanted to adopt him. They wanted to keep him. A sinking pit opened in his stomach. They didn't know about his quirk. The nice family didn't know he had a villain's quirk. They deserved to know. Might as well get it over with. My quirk, it's... Oh, your quirk? Mrs. Midoriya laughed, surprising Hitoshi. You wouldn't believe how many times Zuko has told us how amazing it is. For a while we thought there was a new hero, but then he told us it was his friend. He told me you wanted to be a hero too, right? Yes, but... Sweetie, it's okay, she said kindly, kneeling on the floor again. A quirk isn't a villain's unless the person is one. Your quirk can be used for whatever you want it to. Hitoshi stood there in shock. He had never been told that by anyone but Zoo, definitely not by any adults. And, oh, he was crying again. Maybe he really did belong in the Midoriya family. The thought made him smile. Inko was a tad bit overwhelmed. She had never thought that the foster and adoption process would involve so much homework. Then again, she also had the court paperwork and more research into Shinso's past foster families to do. It was a lot. She had never been so thankful for Hitoshi being so willing to play with the boys. They would go back to school soon, but until then, they were home 24/7. She had put together a solid case. A thick binder was filled to the brim with charges and evidence against every horrible foster family Shinso had ever had. Inko would rather not go into the specifics of exactly how she had gotten all of this information. If the court asked, she could have legitimate methods that could explain it. Not to say that those were the methods she used, but they were different methods nonetheless. What threw her for a loop was that the two of them had to attend classes. Only 3, but they were each 4 hours long. Their old babysitter was Mitsuki, who was no longer an option for obvious reasons. That left, well, 2 people, really. Their neighbors were a nice young man who constantly looked like he needed a nap, and his roommate, who was the personification of an exclamation point painted yellow. They had taken a liking to Izuku. Shinso, too, the few times they had seen him. The blonde one, Yamato was his name, she remembered, had offered to babysit if she ever needed it. Hopefully they would still be okay with it. One trip down the hall later, and they had a babysitter. 2, actually. The scruffy one, Aizawa, answered the door. His roommate had bounced up as soon as she mentioned the boys, readily agreeing to babysit once he learned it was on his day off. It took a weight off Inko's mind. The babysitters arrived right on time when they needed to. The boys, excluding Hitoshi, were playing heroes in the other room. They were playing as All Might and Eraserhead this time. Those were their favorites, so it was what they played as the most often. The boys will need lunch, but we should be back by dinner. They can play by themselves, but might want you to join. The game is usually heroes or hide and seek. Feel free to use the TV. Oh, and as few marshmallows as you can for Shinso. Goodness knows if he's already gotten some today. Okay, have a good time, Mrs. Midoriya. Inko left, feeling like her boys were in good hands. Now they just had to get through these classes. Izuku liked their neighbors. Mr. Yamada was bright and happy, just like him, and Mr. Aizawa was nice, even if he looked a bit grumpy. Hitoshi liked Mr. Aizawa because he was quieter. Him and Hitoshi were playing heroes when Mama and Dad left. They were rescuing their stuffed animals from villains. Izuku was All Might, and Toshi was Eraserhead, their favorite heroes. He hoped Mr. Yamada and Mr. Aizawa liked the costumes. The two came barreling down the hallway with all the grace of baby giraffes. They didn't trip this time, though. Mr. Yamada and Mr. Aizawa were sitting on the couch, but turned to look at the two boys when they came crashing in. Mr. Yamada made a wheezing sound. Izuku and Toshi immediately ran closer to look over the back of the couch. "Mr. Yamada, you okay?" Izuku asked worriedly. I'm fine, listeners." "Hisashi, stop," Mr. Aizawa grumbled, hiding his face in the big scarf they always saw him wearing. "But they're dressed as Eraserhead." "You know Eraserhead?" Toshi exclaimed. Izuku was proud. It was the first time he had spoken to a stranger that wasn't a Midoriya. "Yeah, he's a super cool hero, isn't he?" Yes, favorite hero." Mr. Aizawa pulled his obscenely long scarf to wrap around his whole face. Izuku was confused and mildly worried for the man, but dismissed it in favor of watching his new brother and Mr. Yamada talk about Eraserhead. "And he jump like whoosh, and then fly, and then he kick the bad guy." "Yes, he does, little listener. You know my favorite part about Eraserhead?" "Hisashi," Mr. Aizawa growled in a warning tone. Izuku looked at him curiously. "What? I was going to say how he can take down villains with his scarf, Shota. And didn't you hear? He jumped like whoosh. Isn't that so cool, Sho?" Yeah, I like him too." Then Mr. Aizawa smirked. "But you know who I like better?" "Who?" "Present Mike." Oh, I like Mike. He cool too," Hitoshi cheered. "Zoo, Mike clothes. Izuku gasped dramatically and raced back to their room with Toshi on his heels. The two adults looked between one another, very confused. The two ran in a minute later. Hitoshi still had on his Eraserhead costume, but Izuku wasn't All Might anymore. Now he was dressed as Present Mike, complete with the leather jacket, sunglasses, and speakers on his neck. "Ta-da!" the two chorused. Both Mr. Yamada and Aizawa promptly fell off the couch, much to the utter confusion of the two kindergartners. "Bye, boys. Be good for Mr. Yamada and Mr. Aizawa," Mama yelled before closing the door. Izuku was happy their babysitters were coming back again. The last time they had played heroes a lot, which was really fun, even if Mr. Yamada and Mr. Aizawa kept sounding like dying cats whenever they saw him or Toshi in their hero costumes. Dad did the same thing sometimes, and he always said it was just because they were really cute, so Izuku figured their babysitters thought the same. Today they were going to make cupcakes. Mr. Yamada really liked American food, and Mr. Aizawa apparently burned most things, so Mr. Yamada was helping them make treats. Izuku was so excited. Toshi kept asking if they could put marshmallows on them. When Mr. Yamada said yes, he lit up brighter than the sun. Mr. Aizawa asked if they could put jelly on them. Mr. Yamada stared at him disapprovingly. Izuku giggled and snuck a few more chocolate chips. "Alrighty, little listeners, next is the flour." "How many?" Toshi asked, holding the measuring cup. "3 many." Hitoshi poured 3 cups of flour with a very serious face. Izuku carried over the milk from the fridge Mr. Yamada said to get. "Milk? How much milk?" Izuku scrambled up onto the chair stationed by the counter. "We need 1 cup of milk, little listener." Yamada poured the milk, but Izuku put it in the bowl. They followed that pattern until the cupcakes were in the oven. The frosting was easy, even if Mr. Aizawa kept trying to put different stuff in it. Toshi was told marshmallows came after the frosting, and the two of them were given the job of keeping it safe from Mr. Aizawa. Their job was being taken very seriously. They decorated the cupcakes once they cooled. After Mr. Yamada explained why they had to wait, it was so the frosting didn't melt. Izuku was proud of remembering. Marshmallows were added to most of them. Izuku looked at Mr. Aizawa weird when he added what looked like applesauce on top of his. All in all, that day was fun. Izuku hoped they came back for the last class Mama and Dad had to take. Hitoshi was so excited. Mr. Aizawa and Mr. Yamada were bringing them to the park. He didn't really know how to feel about the woods next to the park. On the one hand, it was where he'd almost frozen after his foster siblings chased him out. But on the other hand, it was when he found his family. Mr. Shi and Miss Ink and Zu were better family than he could have ever asked for. The first thing they did was ask Mr. Yamada and Mr. Aizawa to push them on the swings. The adults happily agreed, and not a minute later the two boys were shrieking with delight at going so high. It took a while for them to get tired of flinging themselves off the swings, but once they did, their babysitters had a bit of trouble keeping up. Izuku and Hitoshi loved playing tag at the park. That meant the two adults were fighting a losing battle of keeping the two in sight. Mr. Aizawa disappeared at one point, and they found him sleeping in a tree. Hitoshi found it funny, especially when Mr. Yamada tried to get him down. Hitoshi eventually got a bit tired of running around. He retreated to the sandbox while Mr. Yamada pushed Zu on the swings again. Mr. Aizawa sat with him to build a sand volcano. "Mr. Aizawa?" Hitoshi spoke up. He was still getting used to that. "Are Miss Ink and Mr. Shi at school to adopt me?" Mr. Aizawa chuckled, shoveling more sand onto the volcano. "Yes, I suppose they are. It's a very short school." "Do all mommies and daddies have to take school?" "No, not usually. Mine didn't." "My old foster parents should take school. They were mean." Hitoshi didn't notice when Mr. Aizawa looked more interested, but worried. "Did they hurt you?" "Yeah, that was why Mr. Shi and Miss Ink adopted me. Zu my first friend, now he's my brother. I like having a brother." Hitoshi looked up at Mr. Aizawa, tilting his head, much like a cat would. "Is Mr. Yama like that for you, Mr. Zawa?" Mr. Aizawa momentarily choked on air. No, Hisashi is definitely not my brother." "What's he then? He look at you like Mr. Shi looks at Miss Ink." "He does what?" "Look at you like Mr. Shi looks at Miss Ink," Hitoshi repeated, adding sticks to his volcano. "Like he love you a big lot. Mr. Shi said it was like Miss Ink was his moon, and she said he like sun. Zu like Earth, and me like Neptune, 'cause of my hair." Yeah, kid, yeah, you're like Neptune." Hitoshi failed to notice that his babysitter was now bright red. This was No One Left Behind, Chapter 5, written by Cosmic Ace. Recorded by Star1412. If you liked this, let Cosmic Ace know on the original story. Link is in the description. And let me know by leaving kudos or likes and leaving a comment. If you have any other ideas for fanfics I can read, let me know in the comments and I'll see what I can do. Thanks for listening.